Tragically killed while shielding his family, while keeping his family safe from the gunfire that erupted at that rally. No one should ever be at risk when they attend a political rally. An investigation by the FBI is now underway. President Joe Biden has addressed the nation 3 times over the last 2 days, calling for all Americans to lower the temperature. In an address from the Resolute desk last night, he'll be sitting down with NBC's Lester Holt for an interview that airs later tonight right here on MSNBC. And believe it or not, there's more. More news, that is. In a stunning decision that is likely to set up another high-stakes legal battle, Judge Aileen Cannon has dismissed the Trump classified documents case in its entirety. The case is done from her perspective. In her ruling, she decides that the appointment of special counsel Jack Smith was in and of itself unconstitutional. Washington Post reports that the Department of Justice is highly likely to appeal the decision and reports that the case could very well wind up before the United States Supreme Court. We'll have full coverage of that decision and its fallout later in the broadcast. But we return now to Milwaukee, where the nominating process is still underway. Later in this hour, delegates will formally nominate J.D. Vance as the Republican candidate for vice president. Joining us now in Milwaukee at the RNC, NBC News correspondent Vaughn Hilliard and MSNBC anchor Katie Tur. Here with me at the table for the hour, former U.S. Senator, co-host of MSNBC's How to Win 2024 podcast, Claire McCaskill, and former Congressman and MSNBC political analyst David Jolly. Vaughn Hilliard, what have you got?
Well, we've got the fact that J.D. Vance of Ohio is going to be the running mate for Donald Trump here, potentially serving in the capacity that Vice President Mike Pence once served. Of course, Mike Pence of Indiana is not apparently here for this week, but J.D. Vance, who has only served now 18 months in the U.S. Senate, we expect here potentially any moment is going to be making his way down this aisle here to potentially take the stage. This would be the first time that we see J.D. Vance here in Ohio. Of course, this is the man who wrote Hillbilly Elegy, rose to prominence as the author, and was a one-time deep public critic of Donald Trump, calling his rhetoric abhorrent and somebody who he referred to as an idiot, somebody who he was led to suggest that he would vote for Hillary Clinton over Donald Trump in 2016. And yet, in so many ways, J.D. Vance is the story of the modern Republican Party. Somebody who 8 years ago said that he was a never-Trump Republican, here in 2024 is about to become formally the running mate to Donald Trump to serve in the capacity of Vice President of the United States for the next 4 years. And for J.D. Vance and his allies, he saw Don Jr. as one on the front lines. I had the chance to ask Don Jr. about this election, and he, behind the scenes, had suggested that this was an effort there. It's somebody who he knows will be loyal and somebody who will be able to be effective in working and carrying out the policies of Donald Trump. Of course, I was talking to Senator Tuberville of Alabama, who said for the 18 months he had worked to build up a collegiate relationship with his colleagues, a good relationship with those Republican members of the Senate. If they are able to take the Senate majority Republicans here in 3.5 months, of course, J.D. Vance could be an effective conduit for Donald Trump in that capacity come 2025.
Vaughn Hilliard, I feel like in that perfect bit of reporting on the arc of J.D. Vance, and I'm all for arcs, I've been through one myself in my political journey, he also described Donald Trump as America's Hitler. And it's notable because he was the first person to come out and point to the media and Democrats with some of their commentary about Donald Trump for his own critiques of Donald Trump. They're notable not just because he was so completely against him, but the language was some of the most vitriolic language used against Donald Trump by Republicans at the time.
Right. I think that this is, when you look at the aftermath, let's be very clear. The attempted assassination was less than 48 hours ago. And for the likes of J.D. Vance, if you compare it and contrast it to Doug Burgum, the North Dakota governor who is under consideration. Doug Burgum came out with a statement that was much more in lines of sending prayers to Donald Trump and his family during this time here. And on the other hand, J.D. Vance was quite explicit in his social media post, saying that the Biden administration and the rhetoric that Donald Trump was a threat to democracy and a fascist, that was what contributed to an individual taking aim at Donald Trump here. The stakes of what we are talking about are so high, and clearly we were talking about what kind of individual would Donald Trump look in a running mate. We've had that conversation ever since Mike Pence was booted in the aftermath of January 6th. And we knew that he would look for somebody who is loyal, and that is where you saw a cadre of individuals, from Senator Tim Scott, who was a one-time, I think, reticent Republican towards Donald Trump, come out on the campaign trail in New Hampshire and campaign repeatedly for him. Doug Burgum, somebody who said 1 year ago that he wouldn't go into business with Donald Trump in a business capacity 1 year ago, come out and seek the endorsement. Marco Rubio, who 8 years ago covered on the campaign trail when he suggested that he had third world leader, strongman type rhetoric. He going seeking this vice presidency. I think it speaks to the way that Donald Trump has effectively shaped this Republican Party and in his image over the last 8 years. And Nicolle, we had conversations in 2022 when J.D. Vance was running for the U.S. Senate. He was not the only Republican running for that Ohio Senate seat. There were several other candidates seeking Donald Trump's endorsement, yet he got the Trump Act endorsement. And almost every single one of those Trump Act candidates in 2022 won their Republican primaries. And then, of course, the general election was a different story. The people like Carrie Lakes and Tudor Dixons, they didn't win in November. But J.D. Vance, he was the one unusual Trump Act candidate. He did win. And ever since winning that Senate seat, he has been loyal to Donald Trump, in his corner, early endorser of him in his presidential run when some sat on the sidelines, when the likes of Governor DeSantis and Nikki Haley were still in this. J.D. Vance, clearly, he returned the favor very clearly after winning that Senate seat with Donald Trump's endorsement, and in turn endorsed Donald Trump. And now here in the heart of July, in the summer of 2024, he has been named, J.D. Vance, the running mate to Donald Trump in 2024.
Ron Hilliard, I can see all of the action behind you. I want to ask you to please come back if you're able to wrangle anybody of note, or if you'd like to interview anybody while we're on the air. You know where we are for the next 2 hours or so.
Sounds good, my friend.
Okay, thank you, my friend. Katie Tur, what are you hearing about, and I know you've been on the floor all day, and I'm very heartened to see that at least to the eye of someone who's been to a lot of conventions, people seem at ease. They seem to feel secure and safe in this convention space. Just tell me how the tragic events of the weekend have shaped the psyche of the delegates you've spoken to today.
I wasn't sure what to expect walking into this convention today. The last one I went to was 2016 for Donald Trump in Cleveland. And I have to tell you, it feels very similar to what it did back then, but with more confidence. I asked a lot of people how they felt now that Saturday happened. Donald Trump had that brush with death. And they felt that his profile was burnished by that experience. And they did also hope that he was going to be able to take that moment and use it to unify the country. They believe that he is going to do that. Whether he does it is obviously still an open question, but I do get the sense that even if he doesn't make moves in that explicit direction, the people in this room at least will say that he did. They're the sort of people that will point to the other side and say the reason Donald Trump was targeted was because of what Democrats were doing, was because of how the media was talking about Donald Trump. This is not a crowd that is wavering on Donald Trump. The question is, what about the folks out there that don't like either candidate, don't like Donald Trump, don't like Joe Biden? They're tired of the rhetoric. They're tired of the political noise, the heat coming off of all of our politics, and they want to cool things down. Do they see Donald Trump after this convention as somebody who is able to do that? And that's going to largely depend on the way that Donald Trump reacts and behaves, not just here this week, not just with his keynote speech on Thursday, but what he does going forward. It's also going to depend on how J.D. Vance composes himself. You were talking a moment ago, Nicolle, with Vaughn about what J.D. Vance said in the immediate aftermath of the shooting of Donald Trump, and he tweeted out that this was President Biden's fault. He said today is not just some isolated incident. The central premise of the Biden campaign is that President Donald Trump is an authoritarian fascist who must be stopped at all costs. That rhetoric led directly to President Trump's attempted assassination. This is at the time that the Trump campaign itself was telling its staffers and warning people not to go out and to inflame things even further. There was a directive within the Trump campaign telling folks not to do that. But at the same time, the guy who was the front runner for the vice presidential nomination, the one who will be the vice presidential nominee, was going out and doing that very thing. Is J.D. Vance the person that can help tone things down? I was talking to a frontline Republican lawmaker today who did not want it to be J.D. Vance, who wanted it to be Marco Rubio, who believed that Marco Rubio could contribute the kind of energy to Donald Trump's ticket that would unify the country, but also help him win, and he says, a landslide, that he would be able to not just talk to Latino voters, Hispanic voters, but also talk to more moderate voters who are uncomfortable with Donald Trump, either anew or who have continued to be uncomfortable with Donald Trump. The idea that it could be J.D. Vance, who is now seen as more of a flamethrower within the Republican Party, in line with Donald Trump, a Donald Trump, lookalike, if you will, or Donald Trump to be in the future, was not what this lawmaker wanted to see. I was also talking to some delegates on the floor who were throwing out other names beyond Marco Rubio, beyond J.D. Vance, beyond Doug Burgum. They were looking at Elise Stefanik. Obviously, none of those things came to pass. It is J.D. Vance. The question is going forward, what is J.D. Vance going to be able to deliver? Is it going to be the suburban working mom, or is the Trump campaign going to say, we don't need her so much as we need white working class men, the voters that don't come out to every election, the sleeper voters in places like Michigan, here in Wisconsin, Ohio they have on lock, but Pennsylvania, is J.D. Vance the kind of candidate that can speak to those voters, help motivate them to come out for Donald Trump? I can tell you in 2016, this was a mantra of his campaign. They said they were going to break the blue wall. They were going to win Michigan. They were going to win Wisconsin. And people like me would look at them and say, how? You've never done that before. And the mantra was jobs, jobs, jobs. Do they take that on again? And do they use J.D. Vance as their mouthpiece for that?
Katie Tur, I'll give you the same request that I made to Von Hilliard. I know you're in the middle of all of it. If you wrangle anybody interesting, just wave your arms. We'll come right back to you. Thank you so much for your great reporting, my friend. Claire, I know Katie didn't intend to say this, but just because J.D. Vance said that the assassination attempt, which is a horrific and heinous act, I believe I've read it reported as being investigated as an act of domestic terrorism. It is, at a minimum, a horrible security failure. If we can't protect the most powerful Republican in the country, I'm not sure how we convince foreign leaders to come. I mean, it's a horrific story, but there is absolutely no evidence that it has anything to do with anything President Joe Biden said or did, or anything that's been in the media that hasn't surfaced as a part of this story. And I wonder, I worry, I guess, and I'm sure Katie's simply reporting what she's hearing, that some of that disinformation is calcifying, at least in the room.
Yeah, it is. First of all, political violence is evil. And everyone I know who is not a Donald Trump supporter feels very strongly about condemning this violence. There is no one in the Democratic Party that thinks this would be anything other than an awful stain on our country and our ability to conduct free and fair elections. So having said that, I think it's really interesting that he picked J.D. Vance, because if this was going to be a moment where Donald Trump, because he came so close to a brush with death, that he was going to somehow pivot to a softer, more unifying message, then it seems to me he would have reached out to one of the many candidates for vice president that would have done what Katie referred to, and that is open the tent flap a little. Let a few more people in. Soften the edges. Instead, by picking J.D. Vance, who is a flamethrower, who is bombastic, who called Donald Trump cultural heroin 8 years ago, he has closed the flap, and they have now stitched it closed because they're not reaching out to a new group of people. And I think it's fascinating to me that he wanted someone more in his image, willing to say things, which I think was an irresponsible thing for J.D. Vance to say. That is not what the country needs right now. It needs everyone to say, let's quiet this down. Let's have policy differences. Let's don't make this something that stirs people's passions to the point that they take up a gun and try to kill someone. So I am not optimistic that we're going to see a pivot from Trump to a more unifying message, because if he was, he wouldn't have picked him. He wouldn't have picked J.D. Vance.
Well, and we also, like, at some point, if we're still looking for the pivot, the problem is us, right? I mean, Trump doesn't pivot. And I would say, just the cold, hard political calculation, if you look at where he is in the polls and you look at where he believes he'll be after that, I mean, the image of and thank God he wasn't injured in a manner that didn't allow him to walk off the stage, but the way he did it and the images that were captured are instantly iconic.
They are. So, look, first on J.D. Vance, I think you're already seeing the Biden team come out and say he's wrong on abortion services, reproductive freedom. He's wrong on health care, Social Security, January 6th, and protecting democracy. I think rather than flooding the zone with issues, the takeaway from the Vance announcement is that he's unqualified. It's a singular issue. He is unqualified to be president of the United States tomorrow. And where I think a conventional candidate, as Claire said, coming out of the events in Butler, Pennsylvania, would have selected somebody that could be president tomorrow, because that is front and center on the voters' mind now. You would have looked at a Burgum or a Rubio or a Tim Scott, or open up the process all over again. Donald Trump, having just narrowly survived an assassination attempt, is telling the country that he wants his vice president to be somebody that's wholly unqualified. A year in the Senate, that's it. And so on the issues, certainly it's going to be important to unpack Vance's record, but he's not qualified to be president. And I think he's opened up, Donald Trump has a vulnerability politically to the Biden camp. I also think, I don't believe we will see Donald Trump, be a unifying figure over the coming months. We've seen with our own eyes over the last 8 years. I agree with everything that's been said. The assassination attempt requires national condemnation, shared condemnation. It requires national reflection. It requires our national sympathy. But Donald Trump would be mistaken to conflate national sympathy with national support, because nothing about Butler, Pennsylvania requires us to suspend our judgment and suspend reality, which is Donald Trump is someone who tried to instigate violence to stop democracy 4 years ago. That he did that, and we can condemn both incidents. He's also somebody who has suggested he would use the levers of the presidency for retribution. We can talk political issues day and night. We can draw the contrast on fundamental rights and freedoms that we know he would roll back. But it is okay to recognize we are in a very pivotal moment where democracy was almost interrupted in Butler, Pennsylvania by a bullet. Democracy was almost interrupted on January 6th. We have also seen other incidents of political violence with different victims. President Biden tried to allude to those. And just speaking clinically, because we do need to be sensitive about the politics of the moment, I think for many voters who think we've got to get past this chapter of chaos, who do you think truly in their ethos might be more unifying going into the next 4 years? Is it the Donald Trump that we have seen, or is it the Joe Biden? Is it that Republicans want to paint Joe Biden's weakness as being the steady, aging hand? Perhaps that's now his greatest strength, that's exactly what the country is looking for in a moment of chaos. I think this is a rallying moment for Republicans, certainly. It should be for the country on issues of condemning political violence and on self-reflection, national reflection. I don't think it's the unifying political moment that Republicans hope it is. We'll see.
It is interesting and important that everyone is, I think, shaken by how close this was. It is also our job to point out the difference in the response when Paul Pelosi was bludgeoned with a hammer. There was not a universal condemnation of that act of political violence.
No, in fact, there was an incredibly unfair attack on Paul Pelosi personally and on the Pelosi family. He was dragged through the mud, and allegations were made and repeated by people in responsible places that
ex-president's son, Don Jr., hideous.
Hideous. And they made jokes about it. So, listen, there is a temptation to do finger pointing, and that's politics. There's a lot of finger pointing in politics. But I do not think the American people believe for one moment that Joe Biden was responsible, by and large. Now, the Trump loyalists may believe this, that somehow Joe Biden was responsible for this happening. What this really is a hardening of our politics, a coarseness of our politics. And I got to tell you the truth, I honestly know we can lay more of that at the foot of Donald Trump than we can of Joe Biden.
All right, no one's going anywhere. We'll have much more from the Republican National Convention in the next few moments. We're expecting to see for the very first time J.D. Vance, we're going to see him officially nominated as the Republicans' candidate for vice president. And when we come back, it was just 1 month ago that Donald Trump was trash-talking the very city that seems to be giving him a very warm welcome right now, Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Security is on the top of everyone's mind there as well. We'll have a chance to speak to the mayor of the largest city in battleground Wisconsin, the host of the RNC, Cavalier Johnson. He'll be our next guest. Plus, later in the broadcast, a shocking, maybe not really shocking, legal decision today. Judge Aileen Cannon dropping entirely the Trump classified documents case, calling the appointment of special counsel Jack Smith, quote, unconstitutional, quoting liberally from Justice Clarence Thomas. We'll tell you what's next in that case and much, much more when Deadline White House continues after a quick break. Don't go anywhere.
What does a robot know about love? It takes a human to translate that leap in our hearts into something we can see and hold. Etsy.
Hi, I use Febreze Fade Defy Plug.
And I use this.
Febreze has a microchip to control scent release, so it smells first day fresh for 50 days.
50 days?
And its refill reminder light means I'll never miss a day of freshness. Febreze Plug.
Okay, everyone. Our mission is to provide complete balanced nutrition for strength and energy.
Ensure with 27 vitamins and minerals, nutrients for immune health, and Ensure Complete with 30 grams of protein.
Wow. Incredible. Amazing. My go-to is Lumify eye drops.
Lumify dramatically reduces redness.
In 1 minute.
And look at the difference.
My eyes look brighter and whiter.
For up to 8 hours.
Lumify? It's kind of amazing.
See for yourself.
Compared with other chews, one Brevecto chew protects from fleas and ticks for 12 weeks, nearly 3 times longer.
Use with caution in dogs with a history of seizures or neurological disorders. Protection that lasts longer? Bravo, Brevecto. Bravo.
The Keepsake Frames app makes it ridiculously easy to frame your favorite photos. Just choose a photo that you love, select the perfect frame, and you'll have your framed print delivered and ready to hang. Download the free Keepsake Frames app and start framing today.
This bakery needs new equipment fast to keep up with demand. So they're going to OnDeck, the online lender that makes it easy to choose your loan and, if approved, get funds as soon as the same day. Your loan is on deck.
We just shipped our millionth monthly coffee subscription box, so we're sending custom thank you gifts to our team. Our custom ink rep is just as excited as we are and knows what great quality products to get. Celebrate your milestones with custom gear. Get started today at customink.com.
Hi, I'm Jay Jackson. For almost 20 years, Abacus Life has been purchasing life insurance policies from seniors. And in just seconds, you can use the free calculator at abacuspays.com to learn what your policy might be worth.
For many of my clients, selling their life insurance to Abacus was right for them and their estate plan.
Don't sell or lapse your policy without going to abacuspays.com first. There are no fees and no obligations. Get the real value from your life insurance when you need it with Abacus.
Nice to meet you. My name is David. I've been a pharmacist for 44 years. When I have customers come in and ask for something for memory, I recommend Prevagen. Number one, because it's effective, does not require a prescription, and I've been taking it quite a while myself, and I know it works, and I love it when the customers come back in and tell me, David, that really works so good for me. Makes my day.
Prevagen, at stores everywhere without a prescription.
Saturday, September 7th, it's MSNBC Live Democracy 2024, our premier live audience event with your favorite MSNBC hosts. Visit msnbc.com/democracy2024 to buy your tickets. Download the new MSNBC app now at msnbc.com/app.
We all know this here in Milwaukee, that this place, this city, it's a welcoming city. Even among those of us that don't align with speakers at the convention, the fact of the matter is this, is that we all want people of this country to succeed.
That is how the mayor of Milwaukee, a Democratic elected official, began his official hosting duties today at the center of this uncharted and frankly unsustainable moment of political violence rearing its head in our country, with a message of unity and safety for his city and for all of the attendees at the Republican National Convention. Joining us now, Milwaukee Mayor Cavalier Johnson. Mr. Mayor, thank you for being with us.
Happy to be with you, Nicole.
Just first on the security of your city, did you make any different requests or decisions after Saturday's assassination attempt?
Well, first, let me just highlight the fact that what we believe in Milwaukee in terms of the assassination attempt on Mr. Trump, that was vile, it was terrible, it was horrible. That should not befall any American, that sort of violence. It doesn't matter if you're a child going to school, which we've seen in this country. It doesn't matter if you're going to church, if you're going to the grocery store, or if you're a candidate for president of the United States. So I've already wished Mr. Trump a speedy recovery. In fact, he's here in Milwaukee, and I'm glad that he's doing well. And here in the city as the convention moves on here. But it's important to note that the rally that he had this past Saturday in Pennsylvania is much, much different than the event that we're having this week in Milwaukee. The Republican National Convention is designated as an NSSE, which is a National Special Security Event. It is the highest designation for a security event that you can have in the United States. So by definition, it's a more safe, more secure event than what we saw last Saturday.
And what is the feeling? I mean, I've only seen the sort of live interviews that my colleagues are doing, and the attendees seem so happy to be there. They seem to feel able to celebrate the event, which is to them like a political Super Bowl. I've been to lots of those. But what is sort of the feeling that you detect on the streets there and around your city?
I mean, in terms of the folks who are attending the convention here, you're right. I mean, folks are having an awesome time in Milwaukee. I've talked to so many people from all across the country and really all around the world who are coming to Milwaukee, coming to Wisconsin for the first time. They're having wonderful experiences here, and I've had so many people come to me and say that they're going to come back here. Even after this convention is over, they'll come back here, they'll bring their families here, they'll spend money here and help to further stimulate our economy. That's exactly what I wanted with the Republican National Convention, is to elevate Milwaukee, get it to that next level so we can attract other large-scale events, be they political, business, sports, or entertainment, or people just coming to visit themselves, so we can continue to support our economy on the ground and the people who work in Milwaukee.
You and I met when you joined our broadcast after the ex-president described Milwaukee in quite derogatory manners, using adjectives, I think, like horrible, if that's a quote. What do you hope Mr. Trump sees of your great city?
Well, Mr. Trump is here, and I'm sure he's probably looking at his hotel room right now, looking out the window and seeing a vibrant, growing, dynamic city, a city in which Republican delegates literally from all over the United States are enjoying their time in, a city that, in fact, his own party selected to host this convention in. So I hope that he sees that, just like all the other Republicans from around the United States are seeing, that this is a fantastic, a marvelous place to be, especially in the summertime. There's really no place better in the country than Milwaukee, Wisconsin.
I want to ask you about the politics that are ahead. You're in the center of a state that's in the center of the battleground fight to determine who the next president of the United States is. We've also covered a lot of the efforts to protect democracy. I know there's been a big legal victory around the issue of drop boxes. Just tell me how you see the state of the political campaign in Wisconsin.
Well, Wisconsin is the quintessential state. It's the state to watch. It's the bellwether state. Typically what happens is that whoever wins Wisconsin tends to win the White House. So as far as I can see it, the Republican National Convention is happening here. That's not any indication. These conventions are not that party necessarily will win that state. I think from my perspective, what I've seen when I talk to constituents and when I look across the country, that folks are interested in the job that President Joe Biden has been doing. He's been delivering for people, not just in Milwaukee, but in Wisconsin and across the country. You think about the bipartisan work, the bipartisan infrastructure law, the Bipartisan Chips and Science Act, the Inflation Reduction Act, the American Rescue Plan Act that really helped to save Milwaukee from insolvency. So many great policies that have had a wonderful impact here across Wisconsin and across the United States. He's got plans for a second term that I think, when sold to the American people, as we continue to do that, will convince voters here and elsewhere across the country that Joe Biden is the one that we need leading our country in these times. I certainly believe that. I'm going to Chicago as a delegate and proud to support Joe Biden.
One of the issues I think that's top of mind, especially after this weekend, is the threat, the pervasive and indiscriminate threat of guns in this country. I know there was an issue, a back and forth about guns and the Wisconsin state law that allows people to have firearms around the convention. Tell me what concerns you have about the way that turned out.
Look, every single day as mayor of a big city in America, I've got concerns about guns because I've said, many times in my position that there are far too many people. I'm not talking about, law-abiding, gun owners or anything like that. I'm talking about people who should not have their hands on guns in the first place. I'm talking about felons. I'm talking about people who are domestic abusers, people with long criminal histories. Those folks should not have access to guns because when they do, they cause death, harm, and destruction on the streets of our city and of our state and of our country. So we would have loved to be in a position to ban guns around the outer perimeter, or as some call the soft perimeter at the RNC. We're not able to do that at the local level because it requires state law in order to make that change. So the legislature and the governor would have to act in order to implement something like that. We did proactively take some measures that we could do at the local level to ban things that could be used as projectile weapons like bottles and cans and the like. But when it comes to guns, we were powerless. That's a matter of state law.
Mayor Cavalier Johnson, I know how busy these weeks are and these days are, especially the first day. Thank you very much for taking some time out of your schedule to talk to us. We're grateful.
Thank you.
He's a fantastic mayor, very in touch with the issues in his city, but also with the larger issues sort of roiling the country, and sort of echoed a lot of your messages condemning political violence.
Yeah, and if anyone thinks mayors of large urban cities in America are not attuned to the danger that guns represent, they've never lived in one of those urban centers, and they've never tried to govern one of those urban centers. I mean, and that is one of the big divides we have in this country, is between rural and urban. And I think what you've just seen is a mayor who understands that political violence is pure evil, but he also understands that he doesn't have the tools he needs because we have decided in America that everybody should have an AR-15, including the young man who shot and tried to kill the former president of the United States.
It is also notable to me, I once, I think it was 2017 or 18, put on the wall in the big studio everyone Trump had insulted, and it was like Hillary Clinton, Hamilton, he's insulted the city that seems to be doing a pretty good job hosting his own biggest party of the cycle.
Yeah, and he now says he's going to be a unifying figure on the national stage. And I think if we look at his response in Butler, he was the one that said fight, 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 which it's hard to ever question in that moment somebody's response. But amid universal condemnation, his reaction was fight, fight, fight.
And fight whom?
Well, that's the question. Who
was
we
he talking to fight whom?
And then the campaign came out with a statement saying, let's all unify, which was appropriate. I found it refreshing, though. It's heartbreaking, that brief exchange you had on guns, because what I continue to see in this moment is the dissidence on issues is real. You saw Joe Biden in his address say, we need to have a conversation about the future of the country and where the parties stand. Because whether it's guns, access to education and health care, reproductive freedom, the position of the U.S. in the free world, the differences are stark and dramatic, and this news cycle will only last so long. It's a moment for history, but the moment you start talking about access to AR-15s by a 20-year-old who wanted to assassinate a political figure, there are public policy solutions to that. Republicans don't want to talk about it. Democrats do.
All right, you make a good point. I have to sneak in a break, but I'll play some of what President Joe Biden has said, who's addressed the nation 3 times since Saturday. After the break, we'll also turn back to the RNC, where they're set to nominate J.D. Vance as their candidate for vice president. David, Claire, and I will be right back. Don't go anywhere.
So this is pickleball? It's basically tennis for babies, but for adults.
It should be called wiffle tennis.
Pickle! Yeah. Oh. These guys are intense.
We got nothing to worry about. With E-Trade from Morgan Stanley, we're ready for whatever gets served up.
Dude, you gotta work on your trash talk. I'd rather work on saving for retirement.
Or college, since you like to get schooled. That's a pretty good burn, right?
Got him. Game.
Thanks for coming to our clinic. First one's free.
I have a structured settlement and I call J.G. Wentworth, 877 cash now.
I have an annuity, but I need cash now.
Call J.G. Wentworth, 877 cash now.
It's your money. Use it when you need it.
Call J.G. Wentworth, 877 cash now.
Remember when I said we need to screen for colon cancer?
Was that after I texted the age to screen was now 45? Because I said Cologuard.
Hey there.
Where did he come from?
Yep, with me, you can screen at home. Just talk to your provider. We'll screen with Cologuard. And do it my way.
Cologuard is a one-of-a-kind way to screen for colon cancer that's effective and non-invasive. It's for people 45 plus at average risk, not high risk. False positive and negative results may occur.
Ask your provider for me. Cologuard.
Achy legs and painful arches? There's Copperfit Energy Socks for that. Our easy on, easy off graduated compression socks to help reduce swelling, relieve tired, achy muscles, and provide energizing support. Now with arch support technology for targeted compression to help ease arch and ankle fatigue.
These were fantastic. The more I wore them, the better it got.
If you have to wear compression socks for whatever reason, these are a game changer.
Get Copperfit Energy Socks in these fine stores.
Dangerous ladders, gutter muck? Ugh, no wonder you hate cleaning your gutters. Good thing there's Leaf Filter. Our patented filter technology keeps leaves and debris out of your gutters forever. Guaranteed. Call 833-LEAF-FILTER to get started and get the permanent gutter solution that ends clogs for good.
They took the time to answer all of our questions. They really put us at ease.
End clogged gutters for good. Call 833-LEAF-FILTER or visit leaffilter.com today.
This is the story of the one who believes being prepared is not just a way of life, it's how he helps everyone stay safe. He sweats the small stuff before it becomes big stuff. For the one, being an unsung hero in a building full of everyday heroes is just how he likes it. The industrial-grade products you need delivered fast. Call, click Grainger.com or stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Liberty Mutual customized my car insurance and I saved hundreds. With all the money I saved, thought I'd buy stilts. Hi, honey. Hey. Oh, look, no line at the hot dog stand. Yes. Only pay for what you need.
Liberty, 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 liberty.
To improve your digital security, just turn on NordVPN. Guard yourself from data snoopers, encrypt your online traffic, and block malicious sites. Get the deal now.
We're back with Claire and David. Is 439 in the East, and we've memory hold Mike Pence. The whole reason Donald Trump needs a new VP is because he called Mike Pence the P word because he wouldn't be the final nail in his coup coffin, and then left him to die. His supporters wanted to, quote, hang Mike Pence.
And by the way, J.D. Vance has said he would not have certified those electors.
Can I show you what
I mean,
J.D.
think about that.
So J.D. Vance was actually, confronted by Fox's Brett Baier about all the things J.D. Vance said about Donald Trump. Let me show you that.
Well, Senator, this is an evolution, and I know you've been asked about this before, about past comments that you've made about Donald Trump. You've said, I'm a never Trump guy, never liked him. Terrible candidate, idiot if you voted for him, might be America's Hitler, might be a cynical a-hole, cultural heroine, noxious and reprehensible.
I was wrong about Donald Trump. I didn't think he was going to be a good president, Brett. He was a great president.
I don't know if the flip-flop doesn't make you throw up in your mouth, the sycophant he's turned into might.
Yeah, I think flip-flopping is baked in the Trump era for Republicans, sadly. As I mentioned, that's why I think the unqualified tag is important. But I think at the base of what you just raised about the reason J.D. Vance is now needed is because Donald Trump's former Vice President Mike Pence has been, disenfranchised by Republicans. But most of Donald Trump's cabinet won't support the former president either for a fundamental reason. Because Donald Trump did try to topple democracy with violence, and Mike Pence refused to do it. And this is important to the context of what we saw in Butler. We don't know the shooter's motivations. Let's say it was political violence, politically motivated. That shooter almost interrupted democracy through violence, through a bullet. On January 6th, Donald Trump led an insurrection to interrupt democracy. Fortunately, nobody was killed, but the crowd was chanting, hang Mike Pence, and Donald Trump watched as that occurred. It is why
sent out a tweet calling him, not the P word, but we know from Ivanka Trump's assistant that that's what he was saying in private.
And as I've said, the non-legal case here is Donald Trump laid the predicate of a stolen election, issued the invitation for the mob to come to Washington, gave a speech saying, go to the Capitol with strength, not with weakness. They only respond to strength. The crowd started chanting, hang Mike Pence. There were gallows on the lawn. Donald Trump watched. Donald Trump has tried to undermine our democracy and the American voter. The American experience is not guaranteed. Our experiment is only protected by the leaders we have. Donald Trump has shown not to be faithful to the American experiment. It's why Mike Pence is out and why he wants J.D. Vance to be a sycophant. It's also why, while we share in the national condemnation, we must not suspend our own judgment about who the candidates are in November.
Or our eyes and ears. And I think what I mean, you are so elegant, I'm going to be not elegant. If this were dating and Trump were the guy and the first girlfriend that was dating him was Mike Pence, and you say, well, it's not you, it's him. I mean, he left you to actually die. They were chanting, hang Mike Pence, and he said, yeah, go for it, basically. You would warn the next guy that it might happen to you, too. But I actually can't get beyond, I mean, I've spent 8 years covering Donald Trump, and I've had a lot of critics of Donald Trump on, and a lot of people on the right want to point to the media's coverage. No one has been more vicious to Donald Trump than J.D. Vance. Listen to these insults. He called him a, quote, cynical a-hole. He called him, quote, cultural heroine. He called him, quote, America's Hitler. He said this, I mean, Hillary Clinton's campaign was injured because she called his supporters deplorable. J.D. Vance goes farther. J.D. Vance said this, quote, you're an idiot if you voted for Donald Trump. He said he was a, quote, terrible candidate. He described himself as a, quote, never Trump guy who, quote, never liked him, Donald Trump.
Yeah, and the interesting thing here is what this says about J.D. Vance's character. Because he says, oh, well, I didn't realize what a great president he was going to be. I got news for everybody. J.D. Vance doesn't believe he was a great president. I don't know any Republican senators that believe that Donald Trump was a great president. And the people that were around him that provided some kind of measure of, no, you can't do that. You can't call out the military to attack protesters in America. And no, you can't do that. You can't go down to the border and just start shooting people. Those people are all gone. And the idea that they picked this guy shows that they're sure that he would never stand for the Constitution before he would stand for Donald Trump, because he has said that Mike Pence, if he had been the vice president, he wouldn't have certified those electors.
Vaughn Hilliard is with us. Vaughn, I think you were there 8 years ago when Donald Trump picked Mike Pence. Now, I don't know, I guess it took me 9 years to work up a well of sympathy for Mike Pence, but poor Mike Pence isn't even there tonight. He's been a lifelong Republican. Mike Pence went along with all of it up until, and then not including the coup. Your thoughts?
It's hard to get a much more loyal vice president, I think, than what Mike Pence. He disagrees with him. But then when the doors open up, he would come out and stand shoulder to shoulder with the president. And for 4 years, he did exactly that until he did not go forward with Donald Trump's plan to reject the certification of the Electoral College votes on January 6th. And I covered Mike Pence as he went internationally around the country, 3 different foreign trips that I went around the world with him on, and every step of the way, I think he represented the Trump administration in the best light that he could on terms of the agenda and the way that the U.S. has typically been represented by U.S. presidential administrations of both parties. And so I think to get to this point here with J.D. Vance, I think it shows the level of forgiveness that Donald Trump is willing to offer those who come back to him within this Republican Party. And when, you know, Mike Pence made the decision to go and challenge Donald Trump for the presidency, he well knew that it was going to be an uphill battle. He had watched Liz Cheney handily lose, overwhelmingly lose in her primary against Harriet Hageman. He watched candidate after candidate go and try to stand up to, you know, the Trump-backed candidates, and yet he still went forward with running for the presidency himself. Mike Pence is not here in Milwaukee today, and of course he sent condolences to Donald Trump here. This is the apparent assassination, which I just want to underscore as somebody who has covered these rallies over the last 9 years. I think underscores the anxiety that myself as a reporter and so many feel about the state of being able to go out on the campaign trail in today in the year of 2024. But I think Mike Pence also experienced to a certain degree that fear himself a couple years ago. And so this is a moment that I don't think our story, we don't understand exactly where it's going. We're living in it in this present time on July 15th, 2024, Nicole.
Vaughn Hilliard, I know you've been reading Project 2025 sort of page by page. It's 900 pages, 600 pages long. Would J.D. Vance and his past statements, let me read them again. You're an idiot if you voted for Trump. He might be America's Hitler. He's a cynical a-hole. He's cultural heroin, obnoxious and reprehensible. Right. Would he pass the loyalty test as outlined by John McEntee and the folks that created Project 2025 to work in a Trump administration if he wasn't the VP pick?
I'm not sure what the statute of limitations is on statements for the team that is putting that personnel together. But let me tell you why J.D. Vance is intriguing real fast, in a nutshell, if I could, for the Project 2025 folks. And that's because of the ability to make civil servants and turn them into political appointees. J.D. Vance has been on the front lines of articulating that, in his words, that 90% of the federal workforce, in his words, are liberals, that at the department and agency level have been barriers to being able to implement conservative policies, and that the Trump administration for 4 years was not able to be as effective as they wanted to be because of liberals, in the words of J.D. Vance, who were in the executive branch under departments and agencies. And J.D. Vance, over the last 2 years, has been on the front lines of calling for what is known Schedule F. This is something that Donald Trump signed as an executive action in October of 2020, just before leaving the White House, which converted a great share of federal workers and made them political appointees so that they would be more easily able to be fired and replaced by conservatives who, again, Project 2025 building this personnel database led by his former director of personnel in the White House, where they would be able to know who is coming in so they could make a more efficient 4 years for Donald Trump. J.D. Vance is somebody who is very astute in understanding how that vision could be implemented at the department and agency levels for a second Trump administration.
I like that David Jelly keeps sort of bringing us back to where the voters will have a say, right? No one's coming to save us. Vance, Judge Aileen Cannon tossed what was the most open and shut case, according to Bill Barr and Ty Cobb and a bunch of Trump lawyers, right? There will be no legal accountability for Donald Trump in any of the federal cases ahead of the election. But the voters get to decide. And we can, I think, understand the voters' ability to do two things at once. They all find political violence reprehensible, and they are all deeply concerned about the blueprint at a policy level that Vaughn's talking about, Project 2025.
Yeah, I do think, I mean, time will tell, but what we know for sure in this race is that people are really baked in their positions, more so than typical. Because you have two.
Oh, Claire, here he is. This is J.D. Vance walking out on stage. This is following Donald Trump's announcement about 2 hours ago that he had selected J.D. Vance over Marco Rubio, over the now discarded Mike Pence, over others that have been in the running. And here he is shaking hands, the Republican nominee for vice president, author of Hillbilly Elegy. Someone who once called Donald Trump cultural heroin and America's Hitler, now shaking hands and giving hugs on the floor of the Republican convention. It is such a Trumpian moment, David Jolly.
It's terrifying. Yeah. No, I really mean that. Look, I know a lot of folks on the left may be terrified by his politics and ideology.
You said
and
it.
Certainly I'm sympathetic
Kristen,
to that.
You said it.
He's unprepared to be president of the United States, and we're 72 hours or so from an assassination attempt. You have history, Nicolle, with a ticket that has to wrestle with the qualifications of the number two. I think this is a legitimate issue for the American voter. Is J.D. Vance prepared to be president of the United States? I don't think he is. That's not somebody that I feel comfortable taking a 3 a.m. phone call.
Well, and we have on the table in front of us as voters this time a president whose cabinet doesn't support him, whose chief of staff, John Kelly, described him as the most damaged human being he's ever met, whose defense secretary, Jim Mattis, quit for cause, whose other cabinet officials battered on the 25th Amendment at least twice. So if the last cabinet had been successful in invoking the 25th Amendment, Vice President Mike Pence would have become president. This is the Trump history as we know it before our very eyes.
And this is the Republican Party. I mean, I think that's the other thing that's so shocking. They're not skipping a beat with this nomination. There's no question internally about, is J.D. Vance the right person? And in terms of the institutional resistance within the party, I think it's clear that that dies with this pick. There is none. And I think it's an indication also of what a cabinet would look like in a second Trump administration, as well as senior personnel. To Claire's point, I don't think this race has fundamentally changed at all over the last week to 10 days. There are the questions still of Joe Biden's status within his party, but the dynamic between a Democratic nominee and a Republican nominee, when that Republican nominee is Donald Trump and his party, I don't think the dynamics have changed at all coming out of Butler.
I mean, the dynamics may not have changed. The polls have shifted dramatically in the last 3 weeks. And I think battleground Democrats, battleground governors who are Democrats, and battleground senators and members of Congress are deeply concerned.
Yeah, the debate was an opportunity for Biden to reset, and it didn't reset in terms of him taking the lead in a more definitive way. Now, all these polls are within the margin of error, and time will tell. But keep in mind, this guy we're looking at, he absolutely, when he ran for the Senate, told the people of Ohio he did not believe there should be an exception for women who have
from Milwaukee in this tense and volatile moment for the country. We'll show you what President Joe Biden had to say about it last night in an address from the Oval Office. The next hour of Deadline White House starts after a quick break. Don't go anywhere.
Our biggest challenge? Uncertainty. Hidden fees, surcharges, who knows what to expect.
Turn shipping to your advantage.
Keep it simple with clear upfront pricing.
With USPS Ground Advantage.
Your shipping manager left to find themselves, leaving you lost. You need to hire.
I need Indeed.
Indeed you do. Indeed Instant Match instantly delivers quality candidates matching your job description. Visit Indeed.com/hire.
I have a structured settlement and I call J.G. Wentworth 877 cash now.
I have an annuity, but I need cash now.
Call J.G. Wentworth 877 cash now.
It's your money. Use it when you need it.
Call J.G. Wentworth 877 cash now.
My mental health was better, but uncontrollable movements called TD, tardive dyskinesia, started disrupting my day.
TD felt embarrassing. I felt like disconnecting. I asked my doctor about treating my TD and learned about Ingrezza.
Ingrezza is clinically proven for reducing TD. Most people saw results in just 2 weeks. People taking Ingrezza can stay on most mental health meds. Only #1 prescribed Ingrezza has simple dosing for TD. Always 1 pill once daily. Ingrezza can cause depression, suicidal thoughts, or actions in patients with Huntington's disease. Pay close attention to and call your doctor if you become depressed, have sudden changes in mood, behaviors, feelings, or have thoughts of suicide. Don't take Ingrezza if you're allergic to its ingredients. Ingrezza may cause serious side effects including angioedema, potential heart rhythm problems, and abnormal movements. Report fevers, stiff muscles, or problems thinking, as these may be life-threatening. Sleepiness is the most common side effect.
Take control by asking your doctor about Ingrezza.
At Care.com, you can quickly find local, background-checked sitters, read reviews, see their experience, and get your questions answered.
Hi, this is Jess, our new sitter.
Find a sitter today, Care.com.
Hi, I'm Jay Jackson. For almost 20 years, Abacus Life has been purchasing life insurance policies from seniors. And in just seconds, you can use the free calculator at abacuspays.com to learn what your policy might be worth.
For many of my clients, selling their life insurance to Abacus was right for them and their estate plan.
Don't sell or lapse your policy without going to abacuspays.com first. There are no fees and no obligations. Get the real value from your life insurance when you need it with Abacus.
Waiting till Friday to get paid is tricky. Then I heard about Chime. Now I get paid 2 days early, no fees. Early payday guarantees that I can make it to any gig, any rehearsal, anytime. Join me at Chime.com.
As Democrats weigh President Joe Biden's candidacy, Republicans will gather in Milwaukee to formally nominate Donald Trump. Stay with MSNBC for insights and analysis. The Republican National Convention. Special coverage continues this week on MSNBC. Download the new MSNBC app now at msnbc.com/app.
Hi again, everyone. It's now 4 o'clock in New York City. 5 o'clock. It's 4 o'clock in Milwaukee, where all the Republican action is. It's 5 o'clock here. We're continuing our coverage on a day, obviously, chock full of news and time zones. An eventful beginning to the Republican National Convention. Trump has officially been chosen by the delegates as the party's presidential nominee, and he has officially selected his VP. It's Ohio Senator J.D. Vance. Vance is expected to be formally nominated any moment now. President Joe Biden's campaign putting out a statement on Trump's selection, which reads in part, quote, Donald Trump picked J.D. Vance as his running